In this video, we will delve into fallacies in logic. I will be using some simple examples to clarify the fundamental concepts. In my opinion, this is the ideal starting point into logic. Understanding about such structures could help us gain more clarity about how we should structure our arguments. Such give us a better lens to see an issue in an argument in question, or at least a better understanding position from which we can start navigating into further investigation of an argument. Logic provides us a way to see a difference between sound arguments and a bad arguments. For this session, I will be presenting a fallacy, but generally affirming the consequent, but I will build up a base from there. You could take it as an introductory material for in logic, but I will be going through a very quick crash course kind of thing to build a base from there. You guys can make sense out of it. So I think that's give us a better ground into logic and help us preparing us further to venture into vastness logic. So what is fallacy? Well, a fallacy is like a mirage, and they look very perfect from a distance, but the time you take a closer look on them, they start to fall apart, and they just based on a false structures. Their structures are not stable. So what is an argument? In logic, an argument consists of a set of statements, the premises, whose truth supposedly supports the truth of single statements. An argument is deductively valid when the truth of this premises guarantees the truth of the conclusion. A premise is a proposition or statement that serves as a basis of argument or inference. In logic and reasoning, premises are used to support the conclusion of an argument. They are the foundational ideas upon which argument is built, and they're typically presented as true or assumed to be true for the sake of arguments. But premises could only exist in two states, whether it's true or false, but neither both. And premises are like the building block of an argument. If you want to check whether some argument is valid, you start by seeing the truth or truth values of its premises. If the collective truth values of the premises is true, so that means the conclusion should be true also. But we're gonna delve into these details later. But remember, premises are the fundamental building block of an argument. And I will give some examples to clarify a picture in your mind. Let's take an example. It's a simple argument where all humans are mortal. Socrates is human, therefore Socrates is mortal. Now, remember in argument, there is two pieces that you can divide any argument into. The first portion is premises and the other portion is conclusion. Conclusion is always at the end of the statement. Conclusion is one argument could be a conclusion of one argument could be a premise for other. But here is the major premise, which all humans are mortal, and according to that premise, you build Socrates is human. Then if all these above premises are true, then it's conclude that Socrates is moral. That's a conclusion. Now, the truthness of the conclusion depends on the truth values of the premises, and also it's dependent upon the validity of an argument, which we'll discuss later. But hold, just give me a moment. I will explain them later. But this is what you should know. The fundamental things about argument is building blocks of an argument is premises, and to know whether a premise is true or not is dependent upon the truth values of its premises. If the argument is valid and its premises are all true, then its conclusion should be true. So let's see our general form of argument. Here I will use statement variables, which you can use as a replacement or substitution form of premise. So you can substitute a premise of the argument with the statement variables, and we generally use the P, Q, R, or the small letters, we can use it to represent it. But remember, this is a general form of argument, and whereas at the end tail of the argument P4 is a conclusion. So we can use have n number of arguments P1, P2, P3, and the P4 is a conclusion, and this is a general form of argument where a P4 is conclusion as it falls into the end of the tails, and the truthness of the conclusion depends on the truth values of its premises, because in logic we only care about the genesis and the end point and how the in between things goes. That's the general structure of an argument. Well, let's take a more. I want to revisit what we have learned. So this is an argument in which I'm going to take example where each statement is a premise, and at the end of the tail of the statement of the argument is conclusion P1, P2, P and C, and generally conclusion always at the end of the argument. If we combine these all premises, everything together is a form an argument. So these collectively these statements combined together with the conclusion form a structure called argument. Well, a simple form of argument is like a modus ponens. Generally, we're gonna study that, in which this is a form of arguments, form. Whereas if P then Q, P therefore Q. Where if P then Q is a conditional, and I will explain what is conditional means, even though you can guess it if you have experience. But I would try to elaborate what it means in a logical, in a symbolic logic, and where therefore Q is a conclusion. So the component between if and then, if you see the component between like the if and then is called antecedent or implicants or protasis. But you can, most of the time I'm going to use the antecedent but not the implicants or protasis. So this P is a antecedent, whereas the Q is a consequent. So this is just an overview of how we're going to study the form of arguments. So modus ponens, I'm going to take the simple form of arguments. I'm going to use this form of argument to study the validity or invalidity of an argument. So I'm going to explain what conditional is before we delve into more in this form of arguments and this modus ponens things. I want to clarify what conditional is. So because if you don't understand what conditional is, you won't gonna make sense out of it. So a conditional in symbolic logic is like a conditional does not state either that its antecedent is true or its consequent is true. It says only that if an antecedent is true, then its consequent is true also. That is, its antecedent implies its consequent. So the key to the meaning of conditional is generally, we see that we see kind of relationship between which I'm going to discuss what kind of relationship hold. So what's the relationship between the antecedent, or what is hypothetical, and what happened, what you assumed and what happened. So these are what's the relationship between two is the main uh thing that we're going to study. But remember, the conditional doesn't state on its own self that if the antecedent is true, then this consequent must be true. It doesn't enforce such things. We just use this material form, or just this form, to just see the nature, to study the nature that is hold between its antecedent. Like if P then Q, what is the nature between P and Q? What kind of nature? So we're gonna study this nature. So there is three kind of relations we can see in conditional. For example, if all cats like milk, then Dina is a cat. Then Dina like milk. Now this is logical because because it's can consequent follow from its consequent follow from its logically from the premises. Like if all cats like milk, which is all cats like milk, is a premise which is logical, and if and Dina is a cat, If Dina has a cat, then Dina likes milk. Now this remember, when I'm talking about premises, I'm going to re-clarify it. The if and then, whatever come between if and then is antecedent, or whatever come after then is a consequent, not a conclusion, it's a consequent. So so if all cats like milk and Dina is a cat, then Dina is likes milk. Now this is logically because the consequent that Dina like milk is follow from logically from the is antecedent. What is the antecedent says? It antecedent says if all cats like milk, if this is true, and Dina is a cat, if this is true, then logically means that Dina likes milk. Now this is logical way of deriving the consequent. Here the consequent follow logically from its antecedent. There's a logical relationship. Now, what is by definition? The second kind of relationship hold between the antecedent and consequent is by definition. This is the third kind of conditional relationship. So if shape is triangle, then shape has three sides. Now here, the consequent is followed by very definition of its antecedent, which is triangle. So if because the definition of triangle decide whether the shape gonna have three sides or not, it's a definitional. And the third one is by causal. For example, if the gold is placed into solution, which is antecedent, then consequent, it will be dissolved. So here it is not a matter of logic or definition, but more like empirical. So you should test it by experiment to figure out whether this is this is very true or not. That's a lot. That's more like that's causal. There's three relationship that conditional can have: it's logical, definitional, and causal. Now, logic is only concerned with the validity of an argument, not its truth. If the inherent nature of an argument is paradoxical, or if for any form of argument there exists an instance where all premises are true, but the conclusion is false, the argument is deemed to invalid. So what does it mean is that in logician, during logic, we generally gonna more focus on validity of arguments because the validity argument is gonna give us a clue or a structure under which we can investigate or check. More like I would say we can check mechanically whether our argument is valid or not. There's a possibility. There are all the values all the values of our, for example, all the premises of our argument is true, but still the conclusion is false. If that possibility exists, then that argument is invalid, and I'm gonna explain it in more great detail in just the next part of the video. In this example, I will try to explain with these two form of arguments how to figure out whether the argument is valid or invalid in a bit more mechanical way. I'm gonna go quicker. So we're going to follow one definition. How we know that whether the argument is valid or invalid? Well, if you establish a truth table of an argument, and if you see that in truth table there exists a row in the truth table where the both premises P1 P2 are true, but the conclusion is false. Like in spite of premises being true, conclusion is still rendered false. Then that's a pretty big. That's make the argument valid because there is this ambiguous nature in which for one row the argument having a two true premises and then a true conclusion, but also it allows a possibility in which premises are true but the conclusion is false. Let me go an example to make it more clear. So first we take about the valid. Invalid, as you can see, the P1, P2, and C, as you can see, therefore, the C is a conclusion, just bear with me, and P1, P2 as premises. Here, we don't see any kind of instance or in which the both premises are true but the conclusion is false. You do see that the conclusion is not false when the two premises are true. So we don't see such instance. But for the other one, it's pretty obvious when we try to draw the truth table. You can see that there exists an instant in which the two premises are true, and the two premises are true but at false, but conclusion false. So this ambiguous nature for same inputs, there is possibility of two outputs create this ambiguous nature because you try to affirm the consequent. What you're doing is on the just because something happened, you try to reconstruct an antecedent out of it. You try to reconstruct a reason out of it. Like if this happened, it means it because of that thing, and how you add up to the intuition, this mechanical way. I will go further to tell you there is a very good intuition behind this invalidity thing about this truth table. Like if the two, even though it seems illogical that how in for two inputs you have two outputs, different output. It means that the logical system is inconsistent. And let's get further into more intuitive explanation for this uh, fallacy, which is called affirming the consequent. Now, this is a fallacy called affirming the consequent. And let me go more deeper into the next part where I'm going to explain of this topic in a bit more detail. Let's take an example. If rain happened, then road should be wet, premise 1. Road is wet, premise 2. Therefore, rain must have happened, conclusion. I'm going to expand this argument further because, as you can see, you're assuming that road is wet and you driving a reverse conclusion, which is you try to go through the reason. You try to construct a reason out of conclusion, and this is where the fallacy arrives. Because remember, there is many ways something could happen. From circumstantial evidence, we can't deduce unless the investigation is done together the potential causal evidence. You can't just drive a reason or cause out of consequence, because the unknown familiar ways under which some action can go through is limited. There are many ways greater than numbers than you knows that things could go. And let's go and try to give it a picture representation of what I mean by that. Now let's take this set example. As you can see, if you see this diagram, definitely look like Venn diagram. It's a diagram. A is a subset of B. A's set represent a set of a situation under which A is true and B is true. B represents a set where B is true but A is false. Remember, I didn't write it, but if something B represents a set where B is true, the set A is very limited. So if A is true, then automatically B is true. No doubt about it. Because if A happened, the B happened is logical. Because A is come under the boundary of B. Okay? So if rain happened, then roads are wet. The road's gonna be wet. If A is true, then B will happen. So if you try to take a understandable look, let me go further to explain in more detail. As you can see, this when you say that a road is wet, because road is wet, it means that rain must have happened. You are putting yourself in a situation in which you have to ask, okay, rain happened. Okay, road is wet, and there must be rain happened. But the time you make that statement, you're putting yourself into this confusion, this paradox, or this fallacy that The road could be wet for multiple reasons. Not only, it's not confined to a rain. It could be a truck full of wet sand who may pass through that road. There could be a snow who melted on the road, or many reasons. And you're making this assumption on the basis of your small, limited level of understanding. And if you say that there must be rain, that road could be wet, which means the rain must have happened, without doing any investigation, then your argument, the structure of your argument, is also be true. That what if rain doesn't happen? If snow happened and snow is melted, if snow is melted, then the road should be wet too. Now, if you say to me that road is wet because the rain must have happened, you're talking from this point of view. You're talking from an understanding level of set A, which is your level of understanding. That this is your level of limited set of the things that under which you can draw the conclusion. Whereas if I say, no, no, it's the snow who melted last night which make the road wet, which is also a possible scenario. Unless there is no investigation done, we couldn't know. So, in one situation, my argument say not A. It's not the rain that make the road happen. It's if not A means rain doesn't happen, but snow happen. If snow happened last night, it means that rain doesn't happen. If not rain, rain doesn't happen, but still the road is wet because it was snow to make the road wet. Whereas your argument say it must be rain who make the road wet. So because there is these two possibility exist in which A is not true and A is true, and the conclusion still be true, you fall into this ambiguous nature, which is your premises are true now, which means that this form of argument is allow the possibility in which both the premises are true but the conclusion is false. And you can say that in one area, if the A is true, if rain happened because of A, let's suppose if A happened, then it's true. Yeah, if the rain happened, then the road is wet. It means that's a true. But your road could also be wet if rain doesn't happen, which is if A is false, the B still be true, even though your reasons is still true. Like your reasons are still valid. Like if rain happened, the road should be wet. It's true. Yeah, it's true that if rain happened, but still, it doesn't guarantee the truth of the conclusion, because even though your assumptions, your hypothesis is true, it's not necessary, or I say it's not sufficient for consequence to happen. Rain is not the sufficient, or is not the only thing that can make. Let's revisit the main definition. If you can show for any form of an argument there exists an instance of an argument where all premises true but conclusion is still false, then that form of an argument is invalid. As I mentioned previously, just implementing this definition, you can figure out whether the form of argument is valid or invalid. As we previously discussed, we have shown that for that certain form of argument where we try to affirm the consequent, you see there is an instance in which the premises are true but still the conclusion is false. Thank you for watching video, and if you guys have any feedbacks, you can check, you can give it on a Discord channel. The link is in the description, or you can type in comment section, which will allow after a month. I will maybe within the peak I will try to enable comment sections. So thank you for watching, and I will be making more videos about logic and other stuff, especially which I will find more interesting, and I will be exploring new stuff on this channel. My first video, and so there are gonna be some mistakes, some sort of areas in which you can improve, and I hope so that I will try to make more better content.